Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, September 26, 2005. It's on or about 7 p.m. This evening, City Council is going to be meeting a series of committee meetings, with the first being the Planning and Development Committee. Its chair, Jim Sands.
Mr. President, at the moment, the only thing on our agenda is discussion of a lot split that was recommended by the City Planning Commission, that they forwarded to us and suggested that we approve this proposed lot split. This is a lot near the corner of 2nd Street and Central Avenue. It actually fronts on 2nd Street. There's a large house directly on the corner, and this is the empty lot uphill from there. It's lot number 134, section L19 in the city. It's an R1 neighborhood, and it's an R1 neighborhood. This is according to Steve Pearson, this was a residual lot from when this neighborhood was originally platted. It has never been subdivided to this point. The owner is Mr. James Castles, who proposes a lot split, basically splitting it in half. And this would yield 2 lots with 70-foot road frontage each, which is, according to code, the variance involved here is that the lots would be slightly less than the 8,000 square foot lots that are required by our zoning code. Each lot would be approximately 7,140 square feet. During the Planning Commission discussion, Mr. Castles had some plats from other neighborhoods in the city that showed that lots that were platted early on in the city's history were not close to 8,000 square feet. So this is not an unusual circumstance to have a lot of this size. I don't see Mr. Castles here. He was planning to attend, so I don't really have anything else to say. Paul?
I know this property. It's in my neighborhood, actually. It is just open space right now in terms of 2 lots. It's got quite a hillside on it, and I seem to recall this coming in front of council or somebody about 10 years ago, because I seem to recall walking around in a semi-dark with the various council members looking at this. This is the previous owner, I believe, when prior to the lot on the corner with the gray house was also there. I haven't heard any objections to it, but I really haven't been really monitoring the entire neighborhood on that.
You mentioned that to me earlier, and I seem to recall that at that time, this lot and the house on the corner were 1 unit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the lady in the house has died, and Mr. Castles bought this from her estate. And it seems to me at the time that they wanted to separate the house from that lot, and for some reason it didn't go. Then it didn't happen, but I don't remember why.
Yeah, I either recall they were trying for 4 lots, or they were trying for 3 with that house, and therefore it was trying to make 3 non-conforming lots at the time, I think.
So that's the information we have. There, by the Steve Pearson pointed out that some time ago, parking was permitted on that 2nd Street hill, and this particular house, the driveway that exists, there were some problems with backing out of there, and so parking has been removed from that side of the street for several years, so that problem wouldn't necessarily occur.
Decades.
Excuse
Several
me?
decades it's been removed.
Decades?
The parking.
Okay. Well, yeah.
We remember they were going to use this for Metropolitan Housing Authority housing, and it was in 1980, something or other. And on this hill, I guess there was concern about a driveway or any access across the sidewalk, given the children walking to school and the rest. I think we were not wanting 3 units to go on the one. So, as I recall. thought it was
before
his,
my time.
yeah.
Paul?
Also, I'm aware of a lot of the lots there are under 7,000 as is, the present lots, so this is not that off the line.
The only problem is that if they pull out to go down the hill, the other houses are set way back, and so this one is going to be closer in the.
Well, this would allow, as Mr. Pearson points out, this would allow 25-foot setback, front setback, and a 30-foot rear setback, and still have a good building site. So they,
When they pitched it to us, they were talking about it was going to be the family home, and of course, it's a rental property
oh,
with
yeah.
stacked parking. Surprise, surprise.
Um,
I think we ought to plan for any eventuality if you're going to grant this variance. I would like to make sure that there's no stacked parking, because school buses do go up and down this road. I mean, that they'd have to make parking in the backyard.
So, no other variances
Yeah.
with regard to parking variances. Okay, we can try that. Any other questions, comments? We'll go ahead and draft an ordinance and put it up next week for approval of this lot split. And that will be a little more public notice, and if there are some comments, we'll entertain them at that time. Okay.
Tabs taxi. Tabs taxi.
Okay. Okay, so we will close that discussion. I don't have any miscellaneous. Mayor? We're done.
Okay, I guess it's the Transportation Committee. Harold, it's your first.
That's me.
This would be the taxi service draft ordinance that she put together.
2 weeks ago, or a week ago, we had a visit from a taxi owner, and we agreed to talk about the taxi ordinance this evening. Since then, I have met with Steve Pearson, Wayne Key, and Chief Rick Mayer, and talked about this. And as I worked through the process, I realized that in the last 10 years, there's been quite a bit of research done on this, and meetings have occurred, and discussions of what should happen. And as a result, along with those officials, I put together a draft report for you to look at, and I'm going to go through some of it with you, just to give you some idea of the things that we might want to discuss more fully, and suggest that you spend a little time studying it before our next committee meeting. It is a work in process, and already I've had several emails today from the police department and from the code enforcement, just some wording questions that might want to be improved. But the first page of the packet is the taxi ordinances from other areas and what things that they contain. It includes Athens, Marietta, Gallipolis, Bowling Green, Circleville, Chillicothe, Oxford, and gives some idea of what methods they have used to regulate their taxis and what ordinances they have. I found that somewhat helpful. Then, yes.
So the X's mean yes or no
The X's mean
in this
yes.
chart? Yes? I see a license fee. I don't see a price for our license fee on this.
Well, we have a fee
Okay.
is the question, and so that's one of the things that
Oh,
we
okay.
will be looking at, and I believe that's why the X is there.
It hasn't been determined.
Right.
Will be, okay.
To be determined. There's sort of a suggestion here, and it does fit with the guidelines from the other places. But in looking at the document as a whole, the first thing on the first page, and that is 110502, this refers to license fees for all entities in the city. It's not just, it was not just cabs. And with the discussion, we chose to take cabs out of that laundry list and address that separately under the taxi system. So that's just eliminated, the language is eliminated from this section. It will reappear later.
Carol, may I?
Yes.
I do notice that you are having the license fee paid to the treasurer, which I certainly agree with.
It's not. That's all changed.
Okay, but application to the treasurer issued by the treasurer. Having served in that office, that's a very different type of thing than the treasurer usually performs.
Right.
Why are you choosing to do that instead of service safety director or one of the others?
We're not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And that's one of the things I'll address as we go through here. The purpose, our goal in putting this together was to provide a system that was easier to navigate for the businesses, that it wasn't, oh, we don't do that, go to this group, oh, we don't do that. And that was part of what was happening, and I understand that, and the whole thing that you heard previously about, well, there's an administrative code that is separate from the ordinance. That's what we've tried to eliminate. Covering what needs to be covered in the ordinance, and then there'll be no additional administrative policy that has to be dealt with. But this, as I said, this first part is not really anything to do with cabs.
Even though when I look at proposal and it's saying treasurer and the number of spots there, I'm having trouble
That
understanding
may
how to
be
read
for
that.
other licenses.
In the
That's
chart.
the language that, oh, in the chart.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
First
wasn't
page.
looking at the chart.
See, under treasurer, you have license fee paid to the treasurer, and that's fine.
There's a question mark there.
In the draft, it
Okay.
says, the treasurer of the board, and creates a board, and that treasurer of the
Got
board
it.
is
Okay.
the, yeah, what's it called, code office.
Got it, got it, got it.
Okay, so that's how we handled that, to
Okay.
try to streamline the whole thing. Then in 110509, there is a sentence at the beginning that says, in case any applicant, except for taxi cabs. Again, cabs have been taken out of that language so that it only is addressed in its own separate case. However, I felt that while you're looking at this, you might take a look at that paragraph and see that all of this
It's our job.
question has been all appeals coming to us for all licenses and so on, not cabs anymore, but that just seemed to me something that we wanted to look at and see if that's the way that we want various licensing to be. Do we want that hands-on process or not? Because what I hear from council a lot is that they don't want to be involved in a process that requires knowledge of things that we don't necessarily have knowledge of in
And
the
I think-
day-to-day working process.
I think the auditor was just talking about the possibility of expanding our
Right.
licensing activities to cover contractors, et cetera. So-
Right. And one of the things that Steve Pearson mentioned is that that language about in-home businesses and whatever language we wanted to include might be in this portion before it gets to 1108 taxi cabs. That this might be where we would want to put that.
But
Yes.
I have no problem with the appeals coming to us. I think I've been sitting here for 10 years, I've only seen a handful of them. I seem to recall a guy who wanted to do a sandwich truck, and they were for soliciting or vending or something like that. And I think some people came in front of us for home businesses like some kind of online business. So it's not something that we're going to be dealing with all the time. You know, and I think it probably, we do become, you know, be able to hear these people, you know.
In the 16 years I've hung out around here, I only remember the taxis being before us one time, and that was when there was a locking of the horns between the taxi service and a previous administration.
Mhm.
Right.
So I agree with Paul, it doesn't happen often, and if, you know, there does need to be an appeal, it's hard for all of it to be administrative, and there not be some type of reviewing your own stuff, so, you know,
That was just one of the places I want you to look at and think about in
Mm.
terms of, do we want that responsibility and that active part in licensing in general? Taxi cabs, 1108. And the first thing that all of the capitalized heavy print is new additions. Then in an updated conversation today, there was probably, it won't say the code director, because that's not really his title, but just clean up some of that language. So there will be some changes here. But if you look at the first capitalized section, the term taxi cab board shall mean the safety service director, code enforcement officer, and the chief of police. Safety service director will be the chair, code director will be the treasurer, and the chief of police will be the secretary of the board. I'm not sure all of that is in there.
No, mine doesn't have code director in it.
This
That's
was
what's-
added
Okay.
by the chief of police. He emailed me, and that's why mine has pretty yellow stuff on it, and yours doesn't.
Okay.
This just came, so this is late-breaking stuff, but that, they did agree to that idea and got the idea of the board from other cities, that there be a group that sit on this, yes.
So did you say which of those people serves as the treasurer? Because earlier you said
Yes.
that
Code
treasurer.
enforcement.
Okay, because mine says code will be the secretary. So-
so the
It's the other way around. Chief of police would be the secretary, and the code enforcement would be the treasurer.
Okay, wait a second. The service safety director's chair, treasurer, the
Code
treasurer.
director will be the treasurer,
Treasurer, okay.
and the chief of police will be the secretary. Term chauffeur's license shall mean the license issued by the city to operate the taxi cab. In the old code, the term chauffeur's license is sort of used in various ways. There is no longer a state chauffeur's license, and so we changed that to be the license that is specifically given for taxi cabs by the police department. Next question is another one of those things that council has wrestled with from time to time. And that is, should we list the rates in this ordinance or elsewhere in the code? That's one of the things we have to decide. At this point, it's listed in here, but we could remove that and put it in with other rates elsewhere in the code. My feeling is one of the problems with that is it becomes a little less user-friendly, because if you're looking up something about cabs and you want to know about the cabs, you might not know to go to a totally different section and go through that whole section to find the taxi cab fee. There was some discussion over the line, oh, you probably don't have it on, it says, each taxi cab chauffeur or driver, $10 plus any administrative costs needed to do the background check, valid for 3 years. That's not on yours. It's debatable whether that should be in there, but the reason that I wanted it in there is because one of the problems has been that a driver, if they go to get a license, they are responsible for sending in the background check themselves. My feeling was the only way we can guarantee that it's being sent, we know when it was sent in, is if our people send it in. And so I felt that instead of paying it themselves and mailing it in, it would be more appropriate for them to have that done by the police department and pay that fee at that time. Debbie?
Where is that in, I mean, where would it
That-
belong
see-
in what we've got?
Where it says taxi cab business, $50, each taxi cab, $10. See that? Okay. After the last bullet, there is the suggested addition of plus any administrative costs needed to do the background check, valid for 3 years.
I must have a totally different one here. Where is this?
No.
Where is it?
Yeah. Mine's not even close.
I'm not, yeah.
O2.
O2 is right here. There's no fees here. This whole section is.
Okay, State of Ohio, so,
Should be in here somewhere.
yeah, it
Okay.
should be in there. Okay, you don't have any of that.
No.
Sorry.
That's why we're
Um,
looking puzzled.
And that's why I'm saying the reason it doesn't show up there is because it was elsewhere in the code, but the question is, should it be here or should it be elsewhere? Sorry.
Well, there's a certain charm of having it there because we could see it. So
And
are we
that's
talking-
what I
okay.
said.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about $50 of taxi cab business fee, $10
Plus
for
10
each
for each
tax.
cab, plus $10 for
For
each
each chauffeur.
chauffeur's license, plus the background check process. Which, if you looked at the chart at the beginning, it's fairly standard, on the low end it's standard. According to this draft, the application for a license will take place at the code office. I think yours says treasurer. We changed that to the code office. That's where it's being currently administered. Next change is on the next page. It would be 110804. There's just a repeat of the code office replacing the word treasurer. The other thing is down under 110804, number 3, added to the background check, they added offenses: a felony drug conviction, a felony theft conviction, a felony sexual offense, or driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol per guidelines issued by the board. So it's additional felonies to what it said before. Debbie?
It looks in the one that we have, like there are some other small changes throughout about the taxi cab board instead of service safety
Right.
director and I don't see the requirement for the background check. I only see the sworn affidavit language. It,
I suspect we're
Yeah, I
talking
see
about
what you're
different.
saying. It does, I thought it still said the background check somewhere, but I will check on that because the intention is to have the background check. That language on the sworn affidavit was, they want that required as well, that you sign something saying, I have not had a felony, but there also is, it may appear later. I kind of think it does.
Carol?
Yes.
If I may. And I know what I'm looking at is presently in there, but it appears that the administration on their own, and I'm not seeing what criteria they use, can either allow or deny any new applicant by just feeling that it's not needed.
Where,
110804, issuance of the business license. If they find from, upon hearing, shall investigate and hold a hearing upon each new application for license. If they find from such investigation and hearing that the public convenience and necessity do not justify the operation of the vehicles for which their license is desired, they shall forthwith notify the applicant of their finding. And if they find from such investigation that the public convenience and necessity do justify the operation of the vehicle, on and on. What
Okay.
criteria do you use? And I know this is presently in
This is
in
the
law,
current
so I-
code,
yeah.
exactly. So that's something that we need to look at, and do we want that power to be?
And if Rick would like to address it, I'm sure I know.
This is the
I thought I had a
original,
feeling
from
you'd
the
be
original
blindsided.
ordinance.
Yeah. But I mean, when you look at a license for a bar here, we all object one way or another on how that is either granted or denied. And at least there is some objective criteria. I don't think there's any to this. And then the other thing, and I'm sure it exists, but I'm not seeing it, do they have to have a CDL license so that they are taking drug tests and the usual?
No,
No.
there's no requirement for drug testing at the current time.
Didn't you say the
To
CDL?
be a
license?
volunteer at Hickory Creek, you have to take a drug test, but to drive minors around Athens, you don't.
If we were to enter into, or either cab company that we have were to enter into any kind of program such as the
Token
token
system.
program, which we've talked about, then the state would require them to have drug testing. Our bus drivers have drug testing because of our funding coming from the state. But at the current time, it's not in there, and that's something we can discuss.
But every employee that works for the citizens of Athens and drives a vehicle
Right.
takes a drug test.
I think that's part of the discussion.
Carol?
Yes.
Just in response to the question about that investigation for need,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at your chart at the beginning, and it looks like Circleville, Chillicothe, and Oxford all have some requirement that there be a need in the community, so maybe they have some criteria that we can look
Right,
at.
at that, well, I would say that language may have come from one of those codes, because it didn't, because it was already in our code.
Right.
So, but yeah, there is some precedent for having that kind of thing. So that's one of the discussion points, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're, to give you a chance to think about these things. The next thing that happens is that the bonding and insurance has been raised to a more current situation.
Oh.
And here, Bill, where it talks about treasurer, the word board treasurer has been added, so it's referring to the code enforcement officer.
So it's both board and treasurer, it says?
It says
treasurer.
board treasurer
Okay.
now.
I've got board and then treasurer crossed off, but
The next, yeah,
Okay.
we added board there.
it's C? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then there is some, no, he just highlighted this. The only thing that's been changed in '05 is changing parking space to spaces, because we have more than one now. Then the next section, '08, there are some strange additions, and I will have to get this to all of you to look at it more specifically. I actually received some of these in the past hour from the police department. There is an exception under A. It talks about technicians can drive the cab in terms of official repairs, so it just covers that. And that no person under 21 years of age, no person other than a driver duly licensed as such under the laws of the state, and a valid city-issued chauffeur's license. They just wanted that language repeated there. Then it talks about the actual driver's, taxi driver's license, which is referred to as the chauffeur's license, and that application goes through the police chief, referred to as the secretary of the board. That may not be in yours. That's under B, and it may be an addition.
Just as secretary of the board. but-
Okay, So there's some language added there. I will get this page to you because there are multiple changes. It also, on this page, Bill, adds, applicants and current licenses must be free of any convictions for an offense of violation as defined in Ohio Revised Code, so on and so forth. So it has been added here to cover, you asked it, or Debbie, I'm not sure which of you said it doesn't specify, it's added in here.
Where are you?
On this mystery page. You don't see any of this.
There's a lot more additions on her page
Right.
than.
I just got the blue and yellow page this afternoon.
Okay.
I think that those are the spots, although there's a great deal of new language, this is language that was taken from these other codes and just bears some reading on your part. And then at the very end, there's language that talks about if it's a company, for example, if Nelsonville Cab delivers somebody into Athens or takes a person from Athens, they don't have to have an Athens license to come in and get somebody if it's an out-of-town taxi company. The words that are added are at the very end. It just says, from points outside of Athens.
That's under what section? No,
The very end,
18, it says over there.
18.
Cruisins, okay. Making one-way transport persons, okay.
Take off the word county.
Okay.
It's just outside of
city.
Athens.
Oh.
Other questions to navigate your way through this in terms of studying it? Yes.
If possible, can you get us
I will
either
definitely
shoot
get
us
you
an
this
electronic
page.
copy or the entire, actually, whatever else we're missing. We're missing other pieces.
Well, I could forward you this whole edited document that I got this afternoon. The only problem is that this will, I don't know if the colors will show up. I guess it will.
Depends if you have a printer. Oh, yeah, it will.
Yeah. So that'll help in terms of changes. But the things that I was concerned about, I think this answers. The main question that I had when I met with these folks was about the process and making it more clear and complete and not having the code say one thing and then have this additional administrative question. And then having, in this case, appeals would then go to this board rather than to us. So that's, we need to discuss that.
Did the law director look at that
No.
question? Because I think, I mean, generally, we've tried to have appeals go to some different entity than the body that denied the application.
Right, that's a good point. He has not looked at any of this, so I will also forward him a copy. But this is a draft for discussion.
Right.
It is not a draft expecting to be just run through. Much of it has been sitting around for a while, thinking, do we need all of this? And when we had the discussion, some of the corrections that these are mostly authored by Steve Pearson. Most of the corrections were things that we had talked about that needed to be addressed, and the process and the confusion that people were having was a part of that. Yes?
Back at the very beginning, when you had us insert the fees, are those current fees or are those proposed new fees?
Well, the $50 taxi cab fee for the business was what it said currently.
Okay.
But then it appears, it only appeared on the first page where we took out taxi cabs. And we moved it to the body of the 1108.
Oh, it didn't really appear.
Yeah, yeah.
Carol, I'm reading 1108.15
Okay.
to mean, and I hope it's not correct, that no one would ever be able to take a cab to what I call the state store, get a bottle and take it home. And I guess for that matter, to the grocery store and have a six-pack in their groceries and take it home. Am I reading that incorrectly? I think the intent is probably just to stop having taxi cab drivers pick up a six-pack and bring it over to the party,
It's the
which
taxi cab
is
operator.
something I've done in the past.
Right.
but-
It's the operator. It is not a passenger. No taxi cab operator or driver shall use any taxi cab to pick up illegal or deliver illegal drugs or alcoholic beverage of any kind.
Possession of such material within any cab shall be grounds for the
Okay,
suspension
perhaps
of.
it needs to reiterate that
Yeah.
the driver, rather than just random person.
Yeah. I think that could be misconstrued.
One thing that's been taken out of this, before that you could apply for a temporary license while you were waiting for the background check. That's been removed, that there won't be any temporary licenses, or if there was some discussion of, okay, maybe we need a 30-day temporary license while you're waiting for materials to come back with absolutely no renewal. 30 days, period. What's happening now, people come in, and while they're waiting for their license and the background check, they have a temporary license, and then they get another temporary license and another, and there have been cases where people have driven our cabs for extended periods of times without the legal license. And some of them never got it, they just quit before it ever came through. Yes.
So then what's an average anticipated time for a background check to be complete?
The police chief was going to check on that and see if there were ways that they could expedite that. I do know that if you have it done electronically, our police department does not do that, but the sheriff's department does and the OUPD does, that it can be expedited and we can investigate that.
We do electronic fingerprint background checks at the nursing home, and literally it's a couple of days.
Right.
And I'm surprised we don't do it here because that's not a system that's very expensive or difficult to implement. We used to also have a provision where people could work up to 30 days without, and we no longer do that.
You no longer have it.
No, we do not.
And of course, I felt pretty strongly that that's a good
I agree.
idea. But you can see what was happening if the people were sending in their own material. Think about it, if you didn't want that to come back in a hurry,
Screw up the,
you just
yeah.
don't send it in. And
Or
so
smear
that-
it, because it's your fingerprint that you're talking about
Right.
sending in.
Right. So, and I know from working with student teachers, that system has greatly changed in the last 5 years, and it certainly has expedited it and made it more reliable. They're not the smears, there's
No.
not the forgot to turn it in, the dog ate it, all of that. And that was what I was trying to do with these changes. But that temporary, and we might think about, is it possible for our police department to get that electronic fingerprinting system? Any questions or additional comments from council? And I will meet with these folks again. Probably what I think I would like to do is, after we have come back, talked about our concerns, then to meet with them again and say, okay, council had these questions. How can we address those?
Can you get all of us a master
Yeah.
copy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
except that I was going to email it, and I've yet to be able to successfully email it.
W bias at IntelliWave, it's no longer B bias.
Got that, everybody?
As long as I don't continue to get over 2,000 spams a day.
Okay, I will forward the corrected copy. Are there any other things that you think should be addressed? One of the things they have chosen not to do is to set a price, rates for the taxis. The feeling was that the market controls that to some extent. Each company that we have actively working in Athens works in a little bit different way with a little bit different rates. And so that has been the policy, not to control the rate as such. At one time, they had a very elaborate zone system all radiating out from the central core. Well, then if you went from an outer edge to an outer edge, did that count all the way through, or did you get a deduction for going around? Those were some of the kinds of questions they were constantly wrestling with. And so it was the opinion of these people who would compose this board that they would prefer not to regulate the rates.
So people would really have no idea how much the rate would be when they get in the cab?
Well, they can ask the rate up front, and they are expected to do that. And whatever rate the cab company has, they should have a rate card in the cab and then stick to that.
I do know, I'm sorry. I do know that a couple of the people that run the hotels in town, and I'm speaking of the OUN, feels very strongly that our cabs do a good job. They are talking, one lady spoke to me about how she was spoken to by some people that arrange for tours, and how upset they were over the way that one cab driver was smoking in a vehicle, dressed rather nattily, I guess is a way to put it, and had registered complaints, and literally the hotel called in some friends of mine to discuss the matter. So, you know, it is something that's serious, that we really do present our image of the city to one-time visitors many times this way. So
There's some good language in here, too, concerning putting several fares in one cab, that anyone who's already in the cab has to give consent before that can happen for their own protection, and if they prefer not, then that's the way it has to be. Jim?
There was mention in here, we changed parking space to spaces, because there are some new ones, and I've had a couple questions from people about these new these new taxi sites. And so when we have this discussion, maybe I'd like to know why we did that and let's move.
Okay. That was a Wayne choice, and we can have him address that. Paul?
I looked at this stuff. I have no problem with it for the most part. I guess my only concern is I would like someday to reinstitute that token system. So whatever we put structure-wise would be nice to have it, so if we want to go in that direction, it's seamless in terms of.
I do not think that that our code affects that in any
Okay.
way. I've talked to Melissa about that again. It is a grant program. It does involve, the biggest problem is the administrative cost, that it is quite costly to keep track of all of those tokens and how they're used and so on and so forth. And we do have, with the bus system, we've got the elderly and disabled fare that is half price. But the cab companies would have to agree to enter into that.
I know.
And then the drug testing does
Kick in.
and some other regulations as well. It is much more carefully regulated by the state. Other comments, questions? Any questions or comments from the audience? Come on up and introduce yourself again with your address. And
My My name is Alice Kennedy, and I'm the owner of Tabs Taxi and Airport Service. I was here before,
Right.
and I'm not privy to the information you have there, but I believe that study was done in 2001?
2003, or 2 is.
2002?
Right.
Okay. And I had received a copy of that, and some of those things I would agree with and some I don't. However, my main concern is why do we have the background checks as taxi drivers in the beginning? And if it's an issue of public safety, could someone explain in what way?
Well, one of the things is that one of the possible uses for cabs is that if a child needs to get to school and has missed the bus, or for some reason has to be sent in a cab somewhere, that just like our teachers are expected to have background checks, do have background checks, I personally feel that absolutely our cab drivers should have that same standard, and that is one way we can protect ourselves.
I don't know what the other company is, but we don't transport children. So I think you're reading into some things into this that don't apply.
Well, I also will say that of all the cities that we looked at in terms of their policies, they all have background checks.
Well, if that's the same report that I saw, it's not necessarily though. Some of them were done on a local level, and I don't think they were all quote federal background or state background, but some of them had them and some of them didn't. A couple of the cities that I've checked, they don't have anything. But as a private business, like I said, I don't see how that would really do anything for public safety. I could see other issues that would take precedence over a background check. And I think myself, I can judge whether I have a good employee or not. And I don't mean employee as such, because they're independent contractors. But that, here's where I run into the problem. If someone comes in, they go get that license, that temporary license, then they come and drive. What if for some reason we don't get along in this relationship and they're gone in a week? That's what happens about these temporary license. And at that point, I'm almost ready to say, why do we even have it? At that point, because the
Have the
turnover-
temporary?
Yeah, but at the same time, how do you get the permanent when the people aren't around? You know what I'm saying? The turnover is such.
Right,
that
I
if
understand the
Right,
turnover
and then the
question.
people that are there and have worked there for a long time, like Mike at my business has been there 2 years. And most of my drivers have been around like a year or 2 years. And I can tell within that time frame if someone's going to work. First of all, they've got to be honest and dependable.
Absolutely.
So, in my business, as far as me owning it, I can see those things and those qualities pretty quickly. And a background check has not served any purpose for us, none. I mean, I just don't see it working. I heard someone saying about discriminate against children. It's not that we discriminate against children. We feel that parents should be with their children. So we won't transport a 6-year-old or 7-year-old
How
by
about a
himself.
teenager?
Well, I've never had a teenager. The only thing we have to worry about that is a runaway. But no. Mm-mm.
I've
You've never-
known teenagers that have taken the cab to school.
Do you? I can't think of any right now.
Carol, I don't think it just ends there. Anybody with a felony theft conviction, I would want an elderly person or a handicapped person protected from them. There are registered sexual offenders that I really do not want to be driving cabs with vulnerable people in the cabs. I have probably as much turnover as anybody running a nursing home, and I have been amazed at what the background checks have turned up with people that we have screened. And these are people that have gone through extensive training provided by governmental agencies that you would think would not have made it that far, and all of a sudden, I'm finding some things that I would never allow them next to patients, so I can't imagine not having background checks.
I would think that it would be for your protection as
Yes,
well.
your liability.
I was just gonna ask, Bill, as someone who deals with background checks, you said you can get them done fairly expeditiously?
Yes.
And what's the average charge? $100?
Oh, no, I
It's
think it's
15,
20.
20.
It's
like,
15%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
$20.
It is a minimum charge, and according to this ordinance, it would be good for
Well,
3
see,
We
there-
have a little box in our human resource department that's about this big that you put your fingerprint on now. And then that is compared against the FBI files. It's done electronically over the web. So it's not what it used to be when we were doing it in ink and mailing that away and waiting 30 days. It's not those issues anymore.
Well, the other backside of the taxi cab business is also that I don't even decide who drives for me in the beginning. It's the insurance company. So those applicants are screened at that point before they even get to me. So, I mean, like I can understand the concern of who's in the cab, but then there's also, we have liabilities of who we're picking up and we don't know who they are. I mean, it works both
Absolutely.
ways. I mean, I understand that.
I wish we
But-
could help you more there.
So far, I mean, we haven't had any incidences, and here we have a good rapport. We've been here long enough that when our reputation is such, as I know it, that it's very good, and we've never had any problems with robbing us or anything like that. But like I said, the background check has been the biggest issue with us, just with the insurance companies and then coming over here and getting this. And by that time, I may not even want a driver, or they may not want to drive. So there's nothing in there to give us any time to even get rid of a driver and going through the licensing process.
If we could
So-
expedite that so that it only takes a matter of several days, that might make things considerably easier for you.
I don't know, we'll have to see. I really don't know. That's the only thing I can think of right now.
Okay. The only other thing that I might mention is in the old code that is not in this, is references to taking driving courses, and that is no longer required. It was a part of the token program as well.
My name is Michael Jack. I'm a driver for Tabs. And one of the things with the background checks that we have an issue with is there's no rules set out. They say 5 years for a felony conviction. So right now, someone convicted of a felony and not sent to jail can't drive. But someone, a murderer or a sexual offender, can drive if they've committed this crime 7 years ago. So is that going to be addressed? Is it going to be no one with a felony?
We could do that. That was something that we talked about.
Because, I mean,
Bill,
there's no
is there-
process. Right now, it seems all up to the discretion of the code office.
Well, it says 5 years.
Right,
What I
yeah,
am
but I
used
mean,
to-
but, so is someone who's convicted of a fifth-degree felony now more dangerous than someone who killed someone 10 years ago?
What I am used to and the way that it works in the nursing home, and I would know of no reason that we couldn't adopt something similar to what I'm about to describe. Here is a list of convictions of certain things and by number, and I'm not a police or judicial person, so I cannot tell you exactly what those are, but things that fall under this category, never drive. Things that fall under this category after a certain period of time, things that fall under this category, that lady makes up the determination. As administrator of the nursing home, there is a certain group of offenses that I can interview the person, review the case, and determine, is this somebody that I feel is okay about allowing to work at a nursing home? And I do that. I've probably done it about 5 times in the last year, and I think about 3 of those people were allowed to work. Then there are those that you do this and you're never going to be a taxi cab driver or a nurse's aide in Ohio.
Well, and see, that's not something that's set out now. It's just the vague 5-year.
And we certainly could
And we-
include that.
We can
Yeah,
make
I
the
mean,
law
I'm
whatever
sure they
we want it
maybe in
to.
their heads, you know, they have some policy that they look at, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to address was the picking up multiple fares. I mean, only doing one fare at a time is not practical or even possible, especially at night.
It only says you must have the permission of the first fare.
So would we have to put out the first fare? I mean,
No,
when
you're
we're,
obligated to the first fare.
well, when we're at night, especially with the OU students, I mean, it's just not possible. I mean, you're going to have hundreds of drunk students still standing on the street, so that's going to be
That was
an issue
also
for
in
someone
the-
else.
That has been in the code. That is not an addition. That's been something that's been asked. The right of the fare to say, no, I do not want those people in the cab with me.
Okay. And then the other thing is about the rates now. Have they officially been abolished? Because as of May, they were still set and set the same by Wayne Key. We had a meeting with him.
Not according to Wayne Key.
We had a meeting at the beginning of May and the rates fares to discuss raising the fares. And at the end of the meeting, we decided they would stay the same because there was an issue with the other cab company wanting to raise the fares because of gas prices.
Mhm.
And at the end of the meeting, we agreed that they would stay the same as they were.
My understanding is that they are not set by ordinance, but I will ask that question as well.
I mean, as when we left the meeting, we were still set with the same prices that had been in effect
Okay.
for 3 to 5 years.
But you don't all operate under the same fares because some of you have different, if you have multiple people, that's multiple fares, and one of the companies charges for baggage and one does not, and so there's some differences.
Stuff like the baggage, that stuff is all extra, or even stops. I mean, that's at the discretion on top, but the basic fare to go from point A to point B was set by the city.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll continue to work on this. You guys look this over and bring up questions and.
Okay, it sounds like you did a lot of stuff there. Okay, East Union Jeff Hill assessment. I put in your mailbox a cover letter and a draft resolution for assessment. As I stated in the cover letter there, most of this was pulled off of the resolutions of R991 and R495. One being the Court Street improvements, the other being Kenny Drive improvements. You can see that, first of all, I mentioned and I put in bold that it requires 3/4 of City Council to pass it. So that's why I bring that up, because how much work to put into this if we're not into it. The whereases I put together as best I can. Do you have that? Do you need it? The estimates, some of the requirements according to the Ohio Revised Code there is that we have to basically have a public notice of how much the improvements, an estimate of what it cost. We have to decide how we want to assess. In the resolution, it also has to state the property abutting the improvements. It can be done by either outlots. I noticed one of the ones, I think there was actually a resolution for the Lincoln Avenue sidewalk that just included the houses or the streets that are butted it. Let's see other things on it. We do have an estimate, a possible estimate of what it costs to replace the street from Jeff Maiden, about from 2002. I don't know whether that would cover it or not. I talked to Gary Hunter about the payment plan also has to be put in there, how it's going to be assessed and what type. I also pointed out that I think it's bullet number 5 on the cover letter that according to Ohio Revised Code, we can actually collect before we commence any improvements, according to this. So really, this is where I am right now with it. There doesn't have to be, the way I understand it, there's going to be several things that have to be done. We could do a resolution straight on saying we will assess without all the bells and whistles. We can go through the process and add all the required, in other words, we do a resolution with a desire to assess for Jeff Hill. We can do a resolution with all the required parts of it. In other words, get it all filled out. As well as, we don't have to, and also we have to decide what kind of way of assessing. Or we don't have to do anything and keep going with vacating it. You can see some of the things I put in here is that you have choices of how you want to do the assessments: square footage, property, percentage of tax value assessed, proportion of benefits may result in improvement, and foot frontage of the property abounding and abutting the improvement. And that's just straight lifted off the Ohio Revised Code. The other ones in there, basically, we need a bond counsel, I think. That's what Gary Hunter would say we'd have to get in touch with if we're going to float the monies ourselves. But again, what is in a code, a high revised code, is that we could collect the money before we even spend it, if I'm reading that correctly. And that's where we are with this. If you want, and really the reason I bring it up is because we need to, if we need to fix it, and we feel we need to fix it, and where we want to put it, this is one way to do it. And we could do this with other streets. We could do this with sidewalks. The only limitation I saw in the Ohio Revised Code is we can't assess some property twice within 5 years in excess of 33% of it. I think that's what it said. Any questions? Should I keep moving ahead with this? Should I put this forward? Go ahead.
Paul, I just want to point out that 3 weeks ago, maybe, I gave you all memo from Ray Hazlett, which described the discussions that the city's had for the last 2 years since this happened with regards to costs versus benefits. Heads of all departments were polled, and basically they said that Jeff Hill was not, as you kind of said, it's not in the best place, but they considered it not a candidate for replacement. These other times we have assessed, there has been a vital need for these streets or byways to be repaired, and I don't think that that's the case here. So in answer to your question, personally, I'd say no, let's don't go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you suggesting that we put it back to a traffic level?
That would be my optimum, but you have a choice of it. You have a choice of how much percentage you want to assess, including all the cost of litigation, requirements of lands, everything, engineer design. It can be 100%, it can be 20%, it can be 30%, it can be 0%. There is a requirement for an assessment board if it's contested by the parties who are impacted. Personally, I'd like to see it, I'm not sure if I'd like it as a street or not. I mean, I'd like it as a street in one sense. On the other hand, since I listen to the pedestrian faction of my city and I walk around a lot, I could see the desire to have it as a pedestrian walkway. But I do know that we need easements still for the entire length of the road. I do know that there's a desire to improve it, even though I don't see it needing that improvement that quickly. It would be cheaper just to keep it as pedestrian and repair it as such. But this is the alternative to giving it away.
Keep it as pedestrian but not improve it.
Keep it as a pedestrian, improve it, and assess the property, adjacent property owners. These are the options. I mean, you know.
I have to say, I'm still in favor of vacating it and allowing the university to pay to turn it into a pedestrian walkway.
They would pay for it now if we do this.
Isn't it they have to have it vacated in order for them to spend the capital dollars on actually turning it into an improved pedestrian walkway with landscaping?
That's their terms of agreement. What we're talking about is our terms of agreement, where we assess them.
And actually, well, we're not lawyers here, but it seems to me that the funds involved wouldn't necessarily be capital funds. It would be some kind of property assessment in lieu of taxes fund or something, but it might actually be a different pot of money.
It probably would be a different pot of money.
And it sounds to me like the whole process would be different. I mean, they would have to agree to it.
They go to an assessment board. We find an impartial board that says, okay, is this fair? Is the cost fair? Is the process fair? In fact, I don't think you even can question the process. We decide the process. I was on the Kenny Board assessment.
I know you.
Yes, so I'm aware of some of the aspects of that.
You need 5 votes, you don't have them.
I guess not. So I'm not going to do anything else with it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done with transportation.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
2 weeks ago, I gave you this street rehab fund report, and in it said what the commitments we have on the street rehab and then what future commitments there were. The last item on that was possible engineering 682 Richland Avenue in 2007, and I'd estimated a cost of $250,000 for design. Since that meeting, we have, as a staff, discussed further with ODOT that particular project. We're much closer to putting, in fact, they want to put the package in tomorrow to central office on it. So I thought I ought to brief you in some of the reasons for it. For a number of years, we've tried to rehab the decking of Richland Avenue Bridge, and you see different types of materials we've used at different times to try to fix it. I've also applied for State Issue 2 funds twice for that project and has been turned down because the condition of the bridge is not deteriorated enough to qualify under Issue 2 funding. But those particular projects that we went in were in the $600,000 to $800,000 range, and we were asking for assistance. So this has been one that's been on our books, has been a problem area. The traffic study the city did in, I think, late '99, maybe 2000, which projected a whole bunch of different things along with one of the various developers on what's now, well, the last one was Campus Edge. It was Coral and it was GMH, et cetera. And Steve Tyken of Birches and Nyepel had projected different solutions and pathways through that. About a year and a half ago, he was hired again by ODOT to review this intersection again, and he basically came up with most of the same conclusions. And the long-term fix on that, because this intersection is ranked second in ODOT District 10 from a safety standpoint of being unsafe, and 77th in the state of Ohio. So if we look at it as a state ranking, we're not so great, but as a regional ranking, we're pretty high. And if they spread these funds around, and if they're looking at doing safety funds and bridge rehab funds, the requirements for the city standpoint, which would be just an application at this stage that we would submit with their ODOT and B&N estimates, would be to extend the bridge from 4-lane to 6 lanes, to redeck it, to take Route 682 and add at least stacking lanes on the ridges side that would go back proper distances, and add an additional right-hand turn lane as you come 682 to Richland from the opposite direction. If this would be awarded, it would be starting July 2007. It would be the 2007 budget year for ODOT, rather. That really begins July 2006 for us. So it would be next summer at the earliest. That would be a design function, which would be the responsibility of the city, and they estimate that to be $300,000. The following year would be the construction, which would be an 80-20 split. We would put in $650,000 for construction, and ODOT would put in $2,550,000. So total project, package here is in the, $3 million plus dollar, about 3.2 or so. But of it, we would have, as a city, about $1 million in it, spread out over a few years. ODOT would have $2 million if we got the awards. It's my inclination that since you were meeting tonight, they gave me a deadline today of saying, call me in the morning and tell me if you want to commit to this for application purposes. And they could, if there is some financial problems by us, even if it got awarded, they could delay probably by a year if we needed to on the construction side. Because as I explained to them, we do have a couple slips up on Sunset. We have some problems with Primary Road a little bit area from potential slip standpoint, although it's not as dramatic as taking part of the roadway away, but we can see where the hills move some. And there are other burdens, you know, that are there that I've already outlined in the report to you, but I wanted to at least be able to report to the committee today that it would be my intention and recommendation to go ahead and submit that application, see if we can get funded for it, because that's a bottleneck. And really, with the combination of the project that's already under engineer design at Union and 682 and 56, going to 3 lanes on all intersections, and that's scheduled for construction next summer, it would really improve that whole traffic flow in that general area of town through these 2 projects. I don't think it'd be, maybe it won't be quite as dramatic as doing East State Street, but I think it would definitely help the south side and many of the people coming in to work at the university or come to the college. Any questions on that? Where do we start, Brad?
If it were construction beginning in July of 2007,
No, that's design. Well, you're right.
the calendar year 2007.
Yeah.
What, I know it's a long way away and all that, but projected, would that be a 6-month project or a year
Well,
project?
that's what we would go through with the engineering, but we would have to maintain traffic
Okay, yeah.
in some degree, so that you're going to have to look at it in one way or another. I mean, if you have 6 lanes, maybe you want to add the additional 2 lanes on the peripheral of the bridge first. Then the question, sidewalk areas there is also. Would you take out and have 3-lane traffic out of the 6 so that you pave 3 and then switch it to the 3? All of those are the details of the engineering work and you know, is what's ahead of us a year from now. But you can't close down that major artery.
Right.
Especially in early September. Oh, that would be fun.
So
Yes.
we're talking about extending lanes on both directions of Richland towards the
Yes.
OU in as well? How far would that get in?
Well, that's what the design criteria will do, is it can't extend them very much further without a lot higher project cost, because some of the traffic, like having 33 done all the way to Pomeroy, has switched to coming in on 682 rather than using Richland Avenue so much. But as you recall from that traffic study, the major time of utilization was noontime, when many of the people are going out to eat in the restaurant areas. So, but right now, because of the safety, they're really concerned of 682 and Richland to Schaefer, and really probably just what we have right now, because you may recall when we redid the culvert under Dairy Lane, we made it a little wider so that it could handle, I think, 3 or 4 lanes of traffic. But I think right at that point, it's about 2.5 to 3 lanes at most. It would probably be a larger project. Yes, Carol?
If we enter into this agreement at this point, does that lock?
This is an application.
An
at this
application
time.
for, but once that process is started, at what point is ODOT obligated, and what if their funding changes?
Well, what would happen, it would lock in the project as a project subject to funding. That cuts both ways.
Okay.
It's subject to our local funding, and it's also subject to ODOT's adequate funding. What my point was, for my planning purposes, is that this particular street rehab program, which generates about $500,000 a year through a 10% income tax, was voted in by the taxpayers on a renewal basis, and it goes to 2011. Part of the original idea of doing this was to pay down more on East State Street more quickly. That has a $2 million debt on it right now. But with the tax incremental financing at $150,000 this year, and we still projected that to grow to $200,000 because there's additional lots, and there was a completion schedule on what is being occupied right now, that you know, hopefully that'll get up to that, and that can take care of East State Street. At worst case, at $150,000 a year, it'd take about 14 years, but it was a 30-year tax abatement. But there are some other things, like right now, we're taking capital out, then of course the water department put new water line money into there. We'll have to make decisions as to when we do that, but we have, as long as we're making payments and pay down on the principal, we're okay on that indebtedness. We just have to know that it's there. And so as these opportunities become available, just like when we applied a year ago, a little over a year ago, for the Union 682, we didn't know we'd get funded it, but yeah, we did, and so therefore we're going ahead. Same thing with this. If they delay it, we have to reapply next. Fine, I can maybe pay a little more down on East State Street. I could, you know, recommend to you to spend more money on our general street rehab budget other than the $200,000 that I've got in there right now. But it's a planning process, and that's why, you know, I had felt 2 weeks ago that I had come to you as a body, as it says there 6 or 7 times this past year, asking for commitments without giving you a summary. And I wanted to give you a summary so you could see the direction. And all of you are quite capable of doing the math to say, okay, this is how much money we will have for street rehab, and thinking of the best projects where especially we can leverage grant money that we can do. Yes, Debbie.
I guess in an attempt to do the math real quickly here, I mean, it looks like without the engineering on this project, we're already at 1.1 million in local match requirements for grants we've already applied for, and you estimate 550,000 possibly coming in for street rehab next year, and we've got a balance of 113,000.
Well, there's 2005, none of that money that's coming in 2005 has been committed yet. So
But that,
will make it
is that the
600.
550,000 projected, or was that for 2004?
That was for 2005. We're projected to get 527,000 this year. And we
Right.
will not have tapped into and utilized all the carry forward at the end of this year. So we will have 113 plus 527 at the beginning of this coming year.
Which is still less than the commitments we've already made.
Right, but remember, to get to that million such, you're taking the high end of the $500,000 on Pomeroy Road to get there. And that's going to be part of the overall decision, and still negotiating with ODOT as to, that's almost all slip repair work. And that's just all, we're trying to convince them, oh, this is real, it's going to happen in the next few years, pay for it. If they say, no, we don't think it's going to happen and not pay for it, we're going to have to make a decision. How much do we want to spend on it? Or do we let it be the way it is, and if it does slip 10 or 15 years from now or whenever, we have to deal with it, because it's now a city road. But the disclosure to you is saying, I'll give you this range of things. Again, the 60,000 under the current issue too is up in the air, and of course the sunset slips. Do we do those all in 2006? Do we do a couple of those? I mean, we're looking at a study to do the one nearest Columbus Road in-house. What would it cost to do it in-house? What would we cost ourselves in the respect of time? Our crews can't do other things. But it does have some degree of savings to it. So all of these are, and that's why when we talk with ODOT, I say, depending upon slips and some other things, this is maybe a construction in 2008 or 2009. And that's okay with them. Paul.
What about pedestrian traffic across that if you start making 3 lanes either direction? I mean, right now, we've had people come in front of us say they can't cross the street without banging cars or being hit by cars or something like that.
Well, I think that's where part of the upgrade to that overall intersection is some upgrades to the pedestrian signal system there. We already have added the white light heads, the time down indicators, et cetera. We could also, for probably $1,200, put in, as we do on the opposite side of the street, a no right turn on red when flashing on the other side. And then it's clearly illegal. You can't make that right-hand turn onto Richland Avenue, and it's timed with the pedestrian walk time. So there are things that we can do to increase the safety there from a pedestrian standpoint. But, you know, one of the things that we've done, obviously, is the bus system. Because we're busing during the academic year, usually 2,000 plus people per week back and forth with the University Courtyard bus, which the way it goes is goes down to the foot of Carriage Hill Apartments and then turns up to go there. So if you buy the pass at us, you can get on the bottom of Carriage Hill Apartments. So we've taken 2 major apartment complexes and tried to say, okay, one, you have to walk further because they're paying a significant amount more money, but we're trying to get people to use the buses. And I think that's still an effort that the Transportation Committee that was appointed, you know, outside is still working on. And we're still want to encourage that. But it's, you know, I think it's identified as a high safety problem intersection. It's not the first time we've ever worked on it.
Actually, that was part of my point, is that it has improved greatly. It isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly since the first concerns were voiced concerning pedestrians at that intersection, it is better. But I also might add that the Transportation Task Force also emphasizes increasing pedestrian and bicycle safety and usage. And so I hope that the project would continue to improve the situations for both. And definitely bicycles on Richland Avenue are a bit of a problem.
Right, and I think part of that stems back to the 60s, when Richland was widened to 3 lanes. And the concerns that were expressed then by people owning property there, that you got 10-foot lanes, you really need 11 or 12-foot lanes, and you need wider sidewalks. We still have a lot of right-of-way there, but again, see, now that we get past the intersection and the state highways, they look and say, oh, well, this is a local project, you're eligible for up to a maximum of $1 million, just like East State Street. And you're talking a significant outlay to be able to do that. I mean, it's not something it's not on the planning table at all, we still have it here, but until you improve the intersection, to us is the higher priority. But I think that before we do a whole lot on the whole Richland Avenue, I mean, we've done a lot from the standpoint of, it may not, the road surface may not look pretty, but it doesn't have all of the holes and bad parts of it that it used to. We've taken it small steps at a time, but we've got it into pretty good shape. But long-term solution there is utilizing more of our right-of-way and reconfiguring a lot of the things, at least out to Hooper Street. But again, there I'm searching for, where can my source of money be for that? I mean, I can only ask you for so much.
Mary, well, I guess I would be really interested in seeing some information about the pedestrian and bike safety, because my understanding is that widening lanes and adding lanes tends to make traffic want to move faster, which would increase risk to pedestrians and bicyclists. So if we're talking about improving the intersection and looking at overall safety improvements, I would just want to make sure that we look at the overall dynamics of what happens when streets are widened and when lanes are widened, and make sure that we're not increasing those risks, because I think it's already a street that is used by a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists, and it's a concern that I have.
I'm not sure how to address that under this time frame. I mean, obviously there's sidewalks on both sides of the bridge. There are no real bike lanes on the bridge currently. I would want to maintain that we could not go to the situation like we did Union Street and only put a sidewalk on one side. I think we have to keep them on both sides. I don't really have a good answer to your question.
Jim?
Yes, Jim?
We commissioned this traffic study from Steve Teakin and his company as a result of citizens' concerns when University Commons was going up and when Campus
Courtyard.
Edge was being proposed. Courtyard, darn.
One of those
Courtyard
university things.
was going up and Campus Edge was being proposed by citizens who were both concerned about traffic in the intersections and pedestrian and bicycle safety. And at that time, it was identified as a dangerous intersection that was going to become worse. And the only opportunity we're going to have to repair it is by taking advantage of grant matches like this. But all we have to do is just specify some concerns that we have. It's still a city street. It's still part of our neighborhoods, really. And, you know, I see some important historic landscaping there that we have to watch out for, as well as these other things. So as long as we, as we go through the engineering, say these are concerns we'd like to be addressed, why can't it be a prototype for some intersection that involves all these modes of transportation? So I'd say, yeah, we need to lock ourselves into it. As the mayor's pointed out, lots of things can make this fall apart. But
Right, it is an application. We won't know for months.
we need to go
what
at
it
this
is.
point.
So how's everybody feel about that? For it? We're chasing it?
Yes.
I guess it's a go-ahead.
Okay.
One thing that would be nice is, it's been years since I looked at that report. Could you make a copy and stick it on the desk in council, just so,
You want the old one or the revised one?
whichever
traffic
one
count-wise
is
you get?
more relevant at this point? I remember there were several options, and I just want to see where we are now compared to what we were talking about 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Sure.
And it's not a big deal, just for background stuff, because I remember you talking about 12 o'clock being the rush hour, but I found the way the traffic was heaviest, and I forget a lot of the details of that.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure, we'll get it off.
Okay. Anything else under miscellaneous for transportation? Okay, we're done. Thanks.
I will be brief on Arts and Recreation Committee. At the last meeting 2 weeks ago, it was requested that I do two things. One was get you a picture of the fountain as close as possible to what it currently is proposed to look like. And if you drive by there, it's beginning to look like this. And so the only thing that really is not here is the painted tiles around the second level of the wedding cake. But the other thing was the discussion of the fence and the cost of that. I did go back to Kevin Schwartzoff and ask what the exact location he had in mind was for the fence, exactly how much territory it would cover, and could he double check on the cost. The good news is he came back with a sale price. So I felt that was pretty good. I believe the price that he gave us before was $6,415. I don't believe, I know that was the price. The new improved price is $2,400. Now, the reason for the big difference is that when he checked the price before, he checked for the installed price, and they have decided that they can install it themselves. And the question was who, the grounds people, Mayor, is it, who would actually install it? The grounds people?
The recreation maintenance.
Recreation maintenance, thank you. That they could install it and that it will extend just in the area of the fountain itself, between the parking lots. It won't go all the way over to the building, which I had said I thought that was where it was going. It is not. It's just in that area in front of the fountain itself. I find the $2,400, and that does include $50 for renting a cement mixer and 10% contingency. Very reasonable, and I would like to toss back into the discussion at least the possibility of including $1,500 to pay for the landscaping that's been put in to up that total amount to $3,900. What is your thought? And my committee members are Debbie and Jim.
90 minutes. I just remember when, I remember it this way, maybe it isn't really the way it happened, but I remember when the possibility of a fence for safety issues was brought up, that some members of Rotary were here making a presentation, and they said, yeah,
Oh,
we can
do
cover that.
I think you are right, and as I talked to Kevin subsequently, he suggests he thinks that that was the way that it was expressed. I understand that. However, when Rotary was spending far more than they had budgeted, it seemed to me that we were the ones that specifically requested the fence and for safety purposes, and that was the reason I felt it was appropriate that the funds come out of the recreation funds. And Kevin Swartzoff agrees.
The safety issues wouldn't be there if the fountain wasn't there. And I support the fountain, I supported the fountain, I'll continue to support it, but
It's bad precedent.
we've
We got pushed into it, we had to do it right then and there, we had a bottom line number, we had 2,000 of in-kind, and now we have 15,000 being paid out by Rotary for tile setting. I mean, is this the way we should do things? I know I'm not on the committee, but
well,
I'd like to get out
we
of here
don't
by 9.
operate that way. It's always a group effort, but I was going to suggest that we try looking at some other organizations who might want to extend the fence a little bit more to give more safety, and I'm wondering if maybe we ought just to look at, are there some other community sources for funding? I'm anxious to see that fountain going up, and I don't want people running out into the street.
Right, I agree, and I would
From
tend
it,
to say
but,
that that's, there isn't going to be a fence very soon if we go the other route. And, I mean, it would take some time to find somebody who would be willing to fund it, and then, start from there. Debbie?
Madam Chair, I have to express deep concern about the priorities if there isn't a fence. When
I agree.
there were decisions made, when this was brought before council and we approved this project, we were given a specific list of what it was supposed to cost and who was supposed to pay which share of it. Someone made decisions to change the shape of the fountain to be round, which made the tile installation cost $5,000 more
Right.
than it originally was supposed to. Someone made the decision to sell bricks for a fundraiser, which increased the cost by $17,576 just by the costs that are related to the bricks here in this breakdown. We didn't make that decision, and I don't think it's our responsibility to cover the changes that people made after the fact, when they knew what the city's commitment was. And when we approved the money, the fence was supposed to be part of that. The sidewalk lights weren't included in that. Those are already installed. Someone's made decisions about what to do regarding this fountain, and I believe it's their responsibility to pay for it.
All I'm saying is that if we truly want the fence in soon, it is my suggestion that we support the payment of the $2,400 and finish the fence. Obviously, it's your choice. If you don't want to appropriate the money for it. We don't.
Yes.
No? Sure. Yes, you may, no, don't.
Captain Mayor.
Where was the decision to make the fountain round instead of square? Because I know when I was saying to some fellow Rotarians that I get the sense that council is quite reticent about providing any other funding for it, and they said, but a lot of the cost that came up was in the decision to make the fountain round instead of square, which caused the tiles to soar.
Right.
Was that a Rotary decision? Was that a council
What it
decision?
was, neither.
Okay.
The subcommittee that was appointed by the Arts Commission that did a study of the artwork and the form of the structure as it fit the site appropriate part of that study. They came up with, from a site standpoint, in terms of the flow of traffic and the walkways and so on, that the round was better from the standpoint of fitting in with the surroundings of the community center. It fit the lines of the community center better, and it fit the potential walkways better. And they went back to the Arts Commission with that, and the Arts Commission voted that if they felt that it was more appropriate that way, that could be a consideration, and at that point, it went back to the Rotary Committee that worked on it, and but I think it probably was presented to them in terms of it's been decided that it's a round fountain.
Because Rotary is having somewhat the same reaction there that I am feeling here, and that is we've got a lot more money to raise than they have. They were looking at the bricks project as a way to pay for it. Now, I was not aware that that caused a much larger increase. How did that happen?
The advertising that they have done had costs involved with it. They wanted to put the walkways in. Regardless, there was discussion of the walkways, a variety of different materials, and that was when they came up with the idea of that if it were brick, it would be even more beautiful, and that they could sell the bricks. But the walkways were part of their discussion from the beginning.
Okay. Have they not raised enough money to cover the cost of the?
They're still selling them.
Okay. Okay. But there is a frustration at Rotary also in the cost. It is not just in this council alone.
But there's
the
another thing
increases.
here, Bill, you gotta look at it. They said they had in-kind, that would be done in-kind, the labor on the tile. It's 2,000 in-kind, and then down here on the new revised thing, which is not that easy to read, could be done on a spreadsheet much more effectively, there's 15,000 of cost incurred. You know, so there's been some changes that have gone on that have changed the complexion of it, and it just seems like somebody better cover that cost. And, you know, it's a really bad precedent, I think, for us to just cover costs when people change concepts. Maybe we should wait till the concept is not half-baked, till it's done. I don't know. I mean, I am annoyed that we're looking at this again and being held captive about some children running in the street when from the get-go, it seems to me that we talked about that, and it was covered. It's covered, you know, so. But I'm not on the committee, but I won't vote for it if it comes up.
My suggestion, I know the Arts Commission has a budget, and I wonder if they can take it out of there.
Fine.
Well, that would be my suggestion.
I have no miscellaneous.
Okay. City services, vending. Before, we had our discussion, sometimes on, sometimes off, about whether vending on Halloween should be covered by the existing vending situation. I promised Jim Sands that I would, that I would revise the vending ordinance. I'll give one to the mayor. Here you go, Mayor. I taught. So I don't really care if we put this up or not, but I did promise him, even though he didn't vote with me. So I'm still bringing my promise to the table here. I didn't put it on the agenda until fairly late because I don't really want to have a big discussion with lots of discussion about what's going on until I just kind of put it out there. 1987 is the last time we amended this ordinance. And I think to some extent the amount of time that is expended every time we talk about amending the vending ordinance ends up being part of it. We've all been talked to until we're practically ready to say, no, no more. So I just thought I'd put it out there. If I can find 4 more people who will co-sponsor it with me, we'll put it through. So this is what we have. I'll try and tell you where I'm coming from. I was so angry in July when we were talking about vending and about how these poor A vendors were really being put upon that I kind of went out and did some calculations, which I think Debbie shipped off to you. And so you know where I came up, how I came up with them. I basically figured full use of the parking meter because they're positioned after the meters go out of business at 6 o'clock to use it. Since that time, Carol and other people have said, well, the bag fee is less, and I don't know if we're going to raise that or not, but it seems to me that a Category A license might be worth about $1,500, including, and even if we don't raise it beyond $750, it seems there's some fair share things that we haven't caught from them. Garbage fee. They are selling food that is wrapped in paper that goes into the receptacles, the trash receptacles. And those trash receptacles are emptied, and the payment for those trash receptacles is made by the downtown merchants. Any merchant that is involved, and so these guys have to pay their fair share, likewise EPA fee and recycling. And so at least $550 annually for garbage, and recycling EPA fee for $42, and $50 for an administrative fee for the A licenses. At least $1,700 would be a fair amount. But I rolled it back, just for the sake of argument, to $1,500, which would include and be parceled out as noted, with them paying the garbage fee. Now, they can say that they have a garbage can out, but the fact is almost everybody who has a business on Court Street is paying a higher garbage rate than the people in the other areas because they do maintain that pickup. So I think that has to be done no matter what. And bottom line, let's go back to reality, folks, and say anybody who's in business is writing this off their taxes. I mean, this is not something they're paying out of their pocket and it's taking food off their kids' table. This goes off the taxes. I mean, this is the real world. It's the same with the rental fees, for goodness sakes. I mean, I can't imagine somebody's in the landlord business that's not writing it off their federal income taxes. But maybe they are. They probably need some education in finance. Category B license, $75 per year, and maintaining payment to the parking meter when vending activity occurs. And that 75 is increasing. That would be primarily administrative. And you'll see why in a moment. Vendors must display their permit while vending. Actually, Debbie did most of the work on this. I can take absolutely no credit for it. And then the B license, this is where Jim said we had to make up that big deficiency. B license holders must spend 20 business days to maintain their license. And I talked to the mayor about this, and he said the meter attendants could check and make sure.
Per year.
What?
Per
Yeah,
year.
per year. What did I say? Per day. Per day, it would be 20 business per year. And if you want to
Business
change
days per
that,
year.
yep, days per year, we can change. And so that would be kind of taking care of that problem that Mr. Sands was talking about earlier. So, and then we have I don't know about that evening license. It seems like it's not very effective, the building evening license. That was when we were having to keep away on the A side for Alibaba. So I don't know if that could even be struck. But fundamentally, there it is. And this is what I talked to Jim about or when we were talking about what had to be done. So I did do it. I just didn't know when it was going to come off the table. So anybody wants to co-sponsor with me? If we have 4 people, we can do it. Some version of this, I don't care, as long as we collect recycling fees, as long as we collect garbage fees. Yep.
Question, on the back page, the first line says Category A licenses shall be 4. 4 is in bold print. So is that, was there no limit before, or?
No, it was another number. It
It
says
was reduced from 7 to 4.
Oh, it was 7?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Okay. Okay.
And
Oh,
then
the next
10,
line.
and I don't know if that's even a reasonable number. I mean, should we have B license says that the number 10? I mean, is that something that's even reasonable? Maybe we have to wait a year till
How
we
are
have.
these numbers derived? Just from the spaces that are available? or-
You mean for A licenses?
Mhm.
Well, we're actually using 5 spaces,
Okay.
but I figured that each vending vehicle is more than 5, or is using more than 1 space. One thing that I would, when the mayor comes back, maybe I'll ask him about, I wish that they would tag the people for use parking other vehicles in those spaces, because some of the vendors leave their hauling vehicle parked there, which would kind of exclude the other vendors coming in on the A side. And so I just, I hope that you got a copy of it, Sarah, but it was just 364, because they can, backed off Sundays and did the full tilt. And 8
You're
to
talking about your
6.
calculation of
Yeah.
vending space?
Yeah, I can go back and find it. I thought we sent it out. And it was just, had a steam, and so I went home and did it. And but I backed off a little bit, and we could stage it in over a 2-year period. And, it's really just a cost of doing business thing. We're not charging them the full amount. We could put 5 spaces there, and they would definitely be primo spaces. And so that's the thing that's out there. I hate doing it to my friend Mr. That's the guy who runs Alibaba, but here we are.
Mr. Leeser.
Yeah. Debbie?
I have a question. Then, if we bring the ongoing fees more in line with the costs that the loss in revenue that the city would have from giving up the metered spaces, would you see this, if we suspend vending to allow it uptown for Halloween in the future, as continuing to have a special event fee, or?
Mm-hmm. I think Halloween is Halloween. But then I'm only one person, there's 6 others that will have. It was pretty close last time, we want to have, and so who knows, but fundamentally, there's no criticism of the A vendors. I know a lot of people really love the vending that goes on here. It's just more making sure we collect what we need to get the baskets emptied, and everybody should pay their fair share. So take it or leave it, I did it a while ago. Jim?
Remind me, for category B, what is the language on the parking meters? Is it, or is there a?
It
Just
allows them
whoever
to
gets
go
there
more than,
first?
yeah, and it allows them to go more than 2 hours. If they have a vending license, that's the main thing it says on the
But
sign.
otherwise, if I'm just parking my car, I can, if there's a space there, I can go, but I have to move it in 2 hours.
Yes, that's the fundamental thing.
And if they're there, they usually have to, realize if they don't get there early enough, they don't have a parking space. It's not like it's saved for them. I've seen them there, they're blocked out because they got there late.
Yeah, I don't know how they manage it. If you go by at 8 in the morning, the cars are always there. Already parked in there,
Mhm.
because it's very premium space. So the B vendors,
Yeah,
once this comes on, it may equalize and may reduce the Halloween rush of our B vendors that don't use their licenses. So basically, this was the work of Ray, Steve, Teresa, and Debbie. I just gave them the.
Okay,
Yep.
a couple of things. One, the 1,500, I could see trying to do that slowly, and just because if you're talking about instituting it this year. the
For
price-
next year.
For next year. So.
Are we
they have-
negotiating now, Paul? Are you willing to support it? This is what I do? Is that what's going on?
Well, I'm willing to support it.
Okay.
But again, I want to make sure that this is going to work. I have a couple of questions.
So give me a suggestion first before we go. You want to go to 1,000, which would cover the cost of the
1,000 first year, 1,500 the next year, I don't, whatever, these are
2,000 the
options.
third year,
No,
2,000.
it doesn't have to keep
All
going
right,
up.
all right.
Again, the way I did the numbers is $6 a day for 300 days, which is
It
what you're
isn't
talking.
$6 a day, it's $5 a day. Our meters run for 10 hours, 50 cents an hour, the street meters.
I ran them from 8 to 6.
It's 8 to 6, but it's only 50 cents an hour. The rates in the parking garage are more than that, but our street parking would be $15, or it would come out to $1,500 by the method that you put forward, not 1,800.
Well, actually, then, so if 1,500 is the max, 365 days a year, taking out 2 for Halloween, taking out Sundays, 50. So, I don't know that I remember 300, but somebody can get back that number.
300 days was what you had on
Mhm, okay.
your sheet.
All right, anybody else?
A couple other things. In terms of 20 business days a year, that seems kind of light.
Okay, that was Mr. Sands' idea, so why don't, he
Well,
just
no, I
said that in
mean, I could
passing.
see just a few more, maybe.
Blame
six-
him.
You know, I don't want to see, discussion I heard was 6 months, but there, you know, if you have 10 vendors there's not enough room for
They
10
can't,
vendors. to
yeah,
have
they
to
may
use
not
it.
be able to get their vehicles in there.
Yeah, so, but 20 days is a pretty minimal amount.
Okay, so perhaps in the future we can discuss that as well, but we would like to have it done probably by, well, we have no time, do we?
What do you
Because
mean?
this is certainly not public health and safety. We'd have to have it done by the end of November to take effect the 1st of January.
Okay, the other
So-
thing, on the B licenses, it's $75, right?
Mm-hmm. I see.
Okay, so in theory, if these people are holding on to the license so that to use them for Halloween, and Halloween costs $500 for an out-of-town person, they're still making money by holding on to this thing. But
Except
they have
that-
to show up.
But they have to show up.
Okay,
And that way we're not making judgment on what their motivations are.
okay, yeah.
They're
okay.
either doing it or they're not doing it. Mr. Sands?
In response to Paul's question about 20 days, I just guess that's just up from nothing. There's no requirement to show up, and so, again, we didn't want to go jump it way up, see if
Okay.
this works.
Okay, yeah.
And the other thing is it appropriate to include in this ordinance the amount of the special event fee, or does that come in another ordinance?
That would, at least in my opinion, we've always suspended it. Do you want to do that? Put in a special? No. I
Within
wasn't, you know.
just some language that says
Mhm.
this, so it's clear from that this doesn't, if that's our intent, that it does not include.
Mhm.
I actually would
Special event.
prefer that if we're going to raise the rates considerably, that we include a phrase, including Halloween, and not charge an additional fee at Halloween as well. I think that one of the things that we need to consider is, do we want vending in Athens? Do we want it to be encouraged? Or are we trying to get rid of it? And I think that that's something we need to consider. I realize cost of doing businesses and all of the discussion that has taken place, but it is not a storefront. They have actually been told that they could not have their own garbage containers unless they were attached to the buggies. Perhaps that language could be changed. I don't see anywhere in this this part of the ordinance anything that refers to the size of the buggies and the practices that they're allowed to participate in and not. There's more to the vending than just the cost that they're charged, and I feel that the entire situation should be looked at. For example, according to our current code, the buggy requirements in terms of size and configuration does not match the industry standard. And in order to have a buggy on our street, your buggy has to be made specially. It is another business cost. I think that needs to be looked at. And what is it that we're trying to do with the vending? Do we want it? Do we not want it philosophically? And what can we do, if we do want it, to make the process feasible? I do know that in the case of bee vendors, there have been a couple of people that have looked into the possibility of vending and decided that it wasn't worth their time. Now, I'm not saying that I feel that, what was it, $50 a year was too much for the vendors, but I do think that there's more to it than just what are the charges of the city, and I think that we ought to look at the entire picture.
Okay, so we got another different position. Anybody else want to sign on? We've got to go before the end of November, have it passed before.
In order for it to be charged on
For the
this,
next year.
for the next year, which means that not only are you doubling their price, but you also put a Halloween, a large Halloween fee on at the same time,
I
so.
believe it was 4 to
there's-
3. So,
But there's still,
but first of all, let's not say that this is a referendum on whether we have or do not have vending, because I don't want to listen to 3 hours of discussion about how I'm against vending. I mean, I just don't think that's it. It's, since 1987, we have an obligation to recoup our costs, particularly with respect to the downtown garbage bins, particularly with respect to this. So I do think that, if nothing else, and you can vote it as you please, I'd like to at least put that in. And I think that the use it or lose it clause is a good thing. And I think it the
I
rest
do
of
too.
it, the rest of it, you know, if you want to change the size, okay. I don't feel like we have time to do research on that. I would like to not see them pull into in front of traffic. You know, have a design that has them required to pull across traffic and back in. I think that's very problematical, and that's the way one of the buggies does. And I would say that those of you out there who think that that we are against vending would probably be misinformed. What we want to do is make sure we have some level of return, maybe not the total amount. I imagine people who work uptown would love to have a space for their very own for $750 a year. That would be theirs dedicated.
I haven't made up my mind yet if I agree with Carol's idea that Halloween should be included in this, but I do feel that if we are going to do a Halloween fee for vending, that it be in this already, so we're not kind of like double dipping or like letting them know later, like, oh, here, now you gotta do this. I think it should be upfront within this, saying if there is a Halloween fee, we just put it in, saying this goes for all the days, but it excludes these few days. And
We
this
could
is the
say
cost
exclude,
for
and
that.
council may choose to charge an additional fee, but I think we can leave it to the next council. I mean, that would be at least the way, because it just gets too commingled, because we will go on and on and on about that, and it would be easier to sharpen it up and say it's for 363 days a year.
Nancy, I would see that what you are doing here is a 22 bullet. What Carol wants to do is a shotgun. And I think that the next term of council really needs to take a look at the whole thing as a whole. But that doesn't mean we can't recoup our price on just the, what you're trying to do this time around. And I would anticipate, if the elections come out, as I would anticipate that they will, that we will assign a review of vending. It's been a lot of years where we can address the more global issue of, do we want this to continue? Do we want to give away some of the most valuable real estate in the city of Athens for a very small amount of money? Were the original intents to foster new businesses that we would hope would then locate in uptown storefronts, as many of the people that Nancy and I listened to that were part of the original vending ordinance said it was their intent when they voted for it. The present vendors would disagree with that entirely. They see their businesses as very viable businesses, providing a service that they need. But that does not mean that we cannot take a look at recouping cost for one type of thing, and next term of council look at the more global issues.
So what would happen if we would just increase it by the amount needed to cover the cost of the garbage? Because everybody else uptown has had a major increase in garbage, and these people are producing litter
More.
that goes into the same buckets, and so why should they have a free ride? What if we just do that, $1,000? And that would include that amount, and then they'll use it or lose it, and then let's go on. You can do it next time. You can be a NIM talk about this. All right? Okay? Okay?
Paul,
And this is no, I want to make this absolutely perfectly clear, sounding crystal clear, using Richard Nixon. There is no intention on my part to eliminate vending. I am four square for it. I just want fair share. Paul?
Considering how valuable this real estate is, if we go one block down to Jeff Hill, we could put the vending on Jeff Hill, all the garbage would go down to Stewart, and we wouldn't have a problem whatsoever.
We wouldn't notice it.
Yeah, how about that? So why vacate Jeff Hill? Why not just put the vending there? We'd have specially designed buggies, too. They'd have to be like,
Exactly.
you know, mountain goats.
Specially designed custom.
Paul, you never stop, do you?
No.
He's
You wait till
relentless.
Kapowski leaves, and then you come out.
Well, the bigger
He could stay as
question
long as
is,
he wanted.
what's his hourly rate and why is he so interested? That's another whole question. Oh, my goodness. Okay, having said that, I guess I'm going to float an idea for next, starting in January, and I'm going to see, and then I'll bring it back in October. I would like to use some of our, one of our council internships to promote recycling education, to work with maybe the Clean Committee, but also maybe to do a little bit of community education on composting. Building on the East Elementary project. Most people know that kids are the way that we often get things done. And the kids at East are doing the edible schoolyard, and they're also doing a composting project. And so it would be a modest amount, but with the idea of if we had our own education person, maybe somebody with a ticket book too, I don't know. But this would, first of all, just see how it works with very, very specific things in mind that we want to see done in the next 2 quarters. I don't know. I just want you to think about that. I think a lot of people say, well, solid waste district's supposed to do that. Well, code enforcement's supposed to do that. Well, you know, there's just too much to do, a lot of people to do it. Let's see if we can work it out. And so think about it, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it next month. And the mayor has something he definitely wants to talk about, and that's FEMA and the Columbus Road thing. So it's yours.
Nancy,
It's going to be money.
was
What?
there anybody in the audience who wanted
I don't think so. There's nobody that I
Well,
recognize.
sit down.
to? Okay.
No? The news media, maybe?
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought there was.
I know that, I know most of the vendors by sight. And then-
Columbus Road. We have 3 potential projects on Columbus Road. They're all intermingled in many ways. The first and the most expensive one, of course, is the line that deteriorated along Riverbank, and the engineering that we've already spent to look at 3 different ways to replace that. And selected one of those, which was to go up Columbus Road to Sunset and then down 3rd Street, I think it is, or 1st Street and 3rd, and hook in one manhole past where the Curtis Street lift station is. What this would do is eliminate a lot of porous line, especially when there's high water. It would eliminate the Curtis Street lift station from having been an operating expense to us, but it would add a new lift station at Circle Drive. Engineering-wise, Engineering Associates has estimated this cost of this project to be $926,000. Now, funding for this, of course, since the sewer funds balance right now is 0, we have been seeking and working with FEMA to try to get them to approve this both as a damage by the high floodwaters that we have received not only this past year but over a series of years with bank erosion, et cetera, and also as a hazard mitigation proposal because we are now eliminating this from the 100-year floodplain. So in those ways. So FEMA has finally gotten back to us and has said they will approve and have done a project workshop sheet that in total is less than what our engineers are coming up with. But if you combine 3 different things, the 75% of the eligible cost FEMA would have, the 12% that would come from the state and the 2% administration we would get for administering this project, FEMA will come up with $752,000, which would leave a net balance to the city for the sewer fund of $173,300. I'm still talking to state issue 2 emergency funds, seeing if they can have anything to help out. We're still corresponding with them on it, but FEMA has established that they want this project done by August of '06. To meet that time deadlines, we need to probably float a loan for $75,000 of engineering costs and get the project under engineering design, so that in the spring we can bid it, look at our financing. Financing on this would probably be one where we would want a construction type loan on call, because there is a reimbursement mechanism with FEMA for their 75% of it, but it's in general after the fact. And the state 12% comes in after the project is completed. And sometimes that's 6 months after the project has been completed. So we're going to have to get a little more creative in the financing of that and go out and probably borrow close to $1 million for the sewer fund. This first increment in this fiscal year will be $75,000 for engineering. Now, payback, of course, of this, we would have to take this in consideration with other items of maintenance and equipment that Nancy and I have been batting back and forth on some different memos. Is what
$2 million in equipment, yes.
Oh, over years. But we haven't replaced significantly much in the, because there's been a couple sewer rate increases, but we had the wastewater treatment plant, new digesters, and we've had other projects that have come up that have eaten up those. And meanwhile, usually your inflationary rate's 2 to 3% with salary, wages, health insurance even more than that, and so it's kept eating into ourselves that way. So that's one ordinance that we would need next week, would be authorize the borrowing and the entering into a contract of $75,000 for engineering services for sewer project. The next project is one we talked about some time ago, the Columbus Road water pump station. We've had significant water breaks both sides of this water line, from that pump house, both the feed to it and then what we then feed to the rest of the businesses, primarily an apartment complex on Columbus Road, and then that also feeds the whole Plains Water and Sewer District water sources. So it's a fair-sized income producer for us, because we get an extra 10% on being outside of the city on all the Plains system. And I think that's, I don't know, 40 million gallons, very high figure of a number of there. It's generating over $200,000 a year of revenue for us with that water line. So we have 2 projects here. One is the pump station, which we submitted to the Appalachian Regional Commission. They have preliminarily approved that. We have a rough timeline. They are supposed to award that to us by the 1st of October or soon thereafter. That project cost is $341,000 and the grant is $245,000. So our net cost to the city, and that's $96,000, a little under 30%. I think it's 28%. The feed to the pump station, I had initially rejected doing it because I wanted to see what the pump station did. But I don't doubt that an 8-inch line, it's undersized in the long run. It needs to be a 12-inch line. It hooks into a 16-inch line that goes across 2nd Street on over the hills to Mound Street, and then is eventually then fed from there by the Highland Reservoir. If we would replace that line from 2nd Street to the pump house, one of the advantages of doing it now is that we're already from Circle Drive to Sunset, which is over half well over half of the distance, we're already going to be tearing up with a contractor to put in a sewer line. So therefore, you've already got all your mobilization, you've got a lot of the digging already done, you just have to do the separation between the two lines. So you probably have, in the engineer's opinion, cost savings in that. But that water line, they're estimating to cost is $657,500. So that makes the overall project $1 million project, of which 245 is grant money. And we have about $750,000 of our own. Now, looking at the water fund's balances, we have unappropriated balance, and I hope that this will grow a little bit, of around $500,000 in that fund today, or as of August 31st. And I'm combining that as the water fund and the Carriage Hill debt fund, which is already paid, and that's an assessment to Carriage Hill for that pump house there. And they're paying that over, I think, a 5-year or 10-year plan. If we would use $350,000 of that in cash, roughly half of the project, that would still leave us a reserve in excess of $150,000 plus whatever more could be potentially generated. So it gives us a safety margin in case we have a project to do. And then there are two potential ways to pay off the balance of the $350,000 once it's all done by the end of next year. First off, and although we've mentioned this source many times, is they put in roughly $160,000 plus various materials of hookup, re-hookup of business connections and everything else on East State Street. So potentially at some point we could reimburse some with a TIF on that. So that's one potential source. The other potential source is really, if you look at last year's audit reports from the audit, we had 2 loans with OWDA for water projects. The last payment on one $356,000 original issue amount will be paid July 1, 2006. And that's about $35,000 per year.
Water plant?
Pardon?
At the water plant?
The water. Well, and then the other one was the 1986 loan, which the last payment is July 1, 2007. So the total $75,000 we've been paying for 20-some years goes off the books by July of 07. Half of it goes off in 06, the other half goes off in 07. So we will create interest and principal payments that we're making right now of around $75,000 per year as being available to us in full by July of, well, actually probably let's figure January 08, because that would be the next payment that we would do. But we could try to fund it 50% in cash, 50% in short-term loans, which we would roll over, get paid down as these go off. If any money from the TIF happens, fine, that's just gravy to my way of thinking. I would continue to probably increase the water rates by 4% a year because we're going to have more projects. I mean, there are areas of town that don't have the water pressure that we want or the fire flow that we want. We're going to have to, and that's why administratively I've been increasing water rates almost every year I've been in office in order to build these funds. But if you look back over the years, we've painted all of our water towers, we've rehabbed our plant, we've upgraded our electricity facilities, and we've spent probably over $200,000 to date on a wellhead protection plan. So we've done some good strides, and this is just another one I think that will improve the water service in that area of town and our revenue producer to that. It'll also, I think, cut down with the new pump house, and by upsizing, the flow will be better regulated, so I think operating costs will go down on that. So there's some cost savings in it. But that's a big chunk of change at $657,000 to replace a water line. But we can begin what I think I really need is the pump house for the water line needs started now, and the design for the sewer, because those are where the grant funds are. But if you wish to discuss for another meeting or two on the other, we can do that, because the engineers can be working on the other projects, and go with, or we can go with the whole package, which is what I recommend, because I think there is a way to pay for it. And I think water and sewer wise on Columbus Road shouldn't be a problem for a lot of years to come. I knew there'd be questions.
I just think it's wonderful that Andy got the money from FEMA and saved us a bundle. I mean, I really do think it's fabulous.
Yeah, I
And
think the
and
whole staff did a lot of good work on
absolutely.
that.
Okay, so a couple specific questions. This means, when you talk about your larger scheme of things, it's, the little hunger isn't a bad thing, you notice. I mean, you really get creative. Okay. On the engineering for Columbus Road, we haven't paid anything on that yet, or didn't we?
We
pay
paid $25,000 for them to design the 3 options
Okay,
and to work with FEMA with us.
okay, I remember.
This would be $75,000 in addition to that. And I have a nice little
100,000
sheet
is
here
a
for
pretty
you.
bargain.
Pardon?
From Engineering Associates, that's a pretty good bargain. Good for you. Okay, so then we have the water line, and the mayor has, and I have in my mailbox waiting for October, a big plan to redo the East End water lines. And so that's going to be back for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, it would be for you.
Yeah, and so it's a zero-sum game, and that's too bad.
And that's where, kind of, Nancy, my debate internally in my own mind has been saying, okay, which is more important?
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's almost like flipping a coin. Both are important. I mean,
Right.
the other one is probably a $2 million project
Yes.
instead of a $1 million project.
And then
as I
using
recall.
TIF in that one is probably closer to the mark, right? On the East End one, because you had all those 90-degree things they had put in there, right? In the water lines and.
Oh, yes, we did
I mean,
do.
we had some crazy stuff that went on.
We preloaded a lot of that by doing all of the work down on East State Street and all the leads to those 11 streets that are there that were done in the 50s and 60s that are 4-inch water lines. And that's why we have the pressure and flow problems there, is they're 40, 50-year-old lines, and they're 4-inch, and they're probably cast iron.
Okay, so one last question would be, you've got these things to put up, but I wanted to know about, as you see it, would this project have make any changes on Columbus Road? I was present in meetings in which you were talking about changes. Are they talking about changing the traffic? The location is okay?
Oh, what we're doing in this, because that's 4 lanes through there, would be probably change it to 3 lanes, because we will be, through these combined projects, take out a lane on the, what's on the 2nd Street side and Circle Hill side.
So, yeah, who's doing
And
that?
rather than replace that with blacktop or asphalt, which would add a couple $100,000 to the cost, we go to grass. But traffic flow-wise, just to have that little bit of stretch that's 4-lane, doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense. And I can't see spending a couple extra $100,000 to put it back into place to do it.
Stop zooming and passing on the right, too.
Yeah, it might change, yeah, we can see some safety
Yeah.
advantages, possibly bike path, okay. I
Well-
just want to make sure everyone knew that this was on the
Yeah.
horizon.
And I actually just have a comment as someone who is a tenant in a business out on Columbus Road and drives that road frequently. There have been very frequent water line breaks out there and boil orders, and I think that we can also look at some cost savings in, just the ongoing maintenance expense that we've
Yeah.
had in
I
repairing
hope
the
so.
breaks.
I hope so. I mean, that's why why we're considering this project, is that we know we've had substantial number of breaks. We know what the problems are. We have to upsize the line. But the new pump house takes it from there on out to the other things. But, yeah, been on our capital list, just like some of the things in the sewer. But been on that list for 4 or 5 years. It's just, how do you get up to the speed to be able to pay for it? And we haven't really been able to find, because it's difficult to find out some grant funding for water lines.
Did a
We can
great
get
job.
loans.
Did a good job. Anyone else?
I know we talked about it recently. What separation do you have to have between a water line and a sewer line now? 6 feet, 10
It's
feet?
10, I think, 10 to 20.
So do we
it's
have right
But
of
it
way?
can't also be, width, it could also be height.
Okay.
And so, but you don't want to put them on top of each other,
Right.
but you really want to kind of do them at different depths, you know, at least a 10-foot separation.
And we do have adequate right-of-way to.
Oh,
to
yes.
do that there.
Well, that's where part of it is we have the right-of-way that's in the berm right now, and we have the right-of-way down First Street that we can use.
Oh, yeah.
So we can tie, First is it's on the books, it's just not paved, it's grass and
You wouldn't know
such.
there was a street.
It's like-
Third Street.
Well, you go down Eric a little bit and then,
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Third Street.
yeah,
Counting up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And see, there is currently a sewer line in through there that does connect and go on down. We would be wanting to reconnect those homes because we feel that line also is not in its sterling shape. And if you're going to go right down through there with a new one, you might as well hook up all the other lines that go into it. So I think in that area of town, we'll have a better sewer system. But and sewer-wise, I think we've got it pretty well covered funded-wise as well as we could get. I mean, I haven't seen very many 85% grant funds
It's amazing.
programs for us, so. And part of that is just that they have a couple, I mean, it was 85% grant, but since we're have some add-ons that they don't have in their estimate, we're just being upfront and saying, I think it's going to cost more than what FEMA thinks it will. It's just like the Sunset Slip. They said to go fix it for $50,000, and we say it's going to probably cost $200,000.
So how will the
We need to
Sunset
put
Slip?
50 toward it.
Are we going to do the Sunset Slip after we go through there with the sewer line?
Well, I don't think we're going to get too close to that Sunset Slip
Okay.
with the sewer line. We're going to,
We're going to go behind the Dairy Queen?
well, that's the first slip, yeah.
That's what I meant.
You talk about the second.
But we would have
I
to
was
do
gonna say
that
over under
after we
around.
would, we'll have to coordinate that. Part of the decision on the
Going
slips up
through the
there is
farm.
probably the middle slip is what we need to attend to first,
Enough levity.
because it's got more roadway problem.
Thank you. So if there are no issues, I'll be bringing it up.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll get back to the mayor about all the $10 million worth of equipment that they want.
Debbie, are you finance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's,
So you may as well stay up there.
I got two others that are.
Right. We have a request to authorize purchase of some new police vehicles, and the mayor actually has the details on that, because I
Right.
was traveling all weekend, so I didn't print it out.
That's true. As you recall, this year, we did not replace any police vehicles. What I'm proposing is that we have enough money put aside for this and a couple other projects. I wanted to replace 2 police vehicles, like the legislation to pass by its normal time in November, so we can get them under order and hopefully get them in early in 2006, instead of this usually, by the time we do it on our normal schedule, it's July before we ever get the vehicles in service. This way, I think we can get them in service in hopefully February. They're Chevy Impala, state bid on it $16,754, but then we're going to transfer our communication equipment and such, but still, you're going to have to get new light bars, and then you have to put in the restraint backings, all the other stuff. I have a breakdown of all that. What it boils down to is $22,501 per vehicle, so I need, we need $45,002 if it's exactly on his estimates. I might want to go 45.2 or something like that, give a little bit of leeway there in case a price changes between now and then. But this would just speed up the problem. It would be the replacement also for 2006. And those 2 vehicles that'll go out of service will be brought up to reasonable speed, and then whoever has the worst vehicles elsewhere in the city will get rid of them and get one of those, because we'll recycle, as usual. Any questions on police vehicles?
And you have some miscellaneous?
Yep, I got
items?
2 others.
You'll bring that forward.
One is with regards to Arts West. We have applied for some grants. They're here tomorrow on one of them for, I think, $4,300. They're also in the process of a fundraising campaign of the Olympian founders. They're trying to get 250 people to donate $100 each. They're already 30-some. And I think some fundraising letters went out late last week and are going out. The rest of them, I think, if they aren't all out by now, earlier. So they're hoping to raise some significant funds. So if those funds actually come in, there's more on the renovation list that needs to be done. But the authority right now is the Athens Oblenus Foundation monies over a 3-year period, all lumped together, and the $6,000 the city committed to the design and architecture and all, all that stuff. So all grant and donations go to actual projects. So if we wind up having 15 or 20,000 more, I'll be back to you asking for more authority under that ordinance to do more to the Arts West facility. I just wanted to alert you to that. You've already given me the authority to seek those donations in an earlier ordinance this year, but if I'm successful in getting the grants or donations, then I want to be able to spend it this year, to be blunt. The last thing I had, and this I attribute primarily to the change that the city auditor made from going, I think, from $500 to $1,000, and I guess next year she's talking about going to $2,000 for capital equipment items. And I got a request from the law director's office for 2 laptop computers and some scanners and hooking them up. And the idea here is that the prosecutors, when they go into the courtroom, would have the ability to have that laptop computer with them hooked in wirelessly, so that if something comes up, either from the judge or the defense attorney or whatever, they can quickly go on and verify information if possible through databases without so that make them more efficient in the prosecution. Unfortunately, all these things are less than $1,000. So when he made the capital request to me, I had to say, no, I can't do it. You have to fund this through your 200 and 300. And the law director said, I don't have it. And so since he's not here tonight, on his behalf, if you could increase his 200 and 300 series by $3,225, he can get a couple laptops and scanners and accessory equipment to be able to perform that function. He has gone to the court to see if the judge's court computer funds would do it. The judge said no, and we looked at law enforcement trust funds, but again, that's all capital money and can't be used for operating supplies. So we're back to the same TETS 22, and so the law director has asked me to figure a way to do this, and the only way I really know to do it is to ask council to appropriate some more money in this budget.
What was the total again?
$3,225 under 200 and 300 series with the law director.
Computers are actually now down to supply cost.
They're under $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you can get them way under $1,000, but you can also buy them above $1,000 too. But that's part of the reason. I mean, we've got about 140 computers.
So we no longer
in the city.
capitalize computers.
And the idea is that over their normal replacement thing, let's not capitalize this and make it a fixed asset, because we know it's only going to last 3 to 5
Couple
years.
anyway.
It's an item of supply.
Questions?
Like a notebook.
Pencils.
Questions or comments? Okay, so both the computers and the police cars will be up next week. Does anyone else have miscellaneous items for finance and personnel?
Are we out of here?
I will just mention that Dale Tamke and the mayor and I are going to get together on Friday to start talking about the process for beginning to put the budget together. It's not a majority of the committee, but just wanted to let folks know we're going to get moving on that. So that's all.
Well, you would be a majority of the committee.
There are 5 of us on the committee.
That's right, I forgot we did that.
Yep.
Who did that? That's too long ago.
Why don't you pronounce it?
Huh?
That's the last committee.
It's over. Turn the camera off.